Welcome back to Broncos Central. I'm Nathan McKenzie and this is my tips for round 14 of the National Rugby League 2026. If you're new to the channel, please like and subscribe and be a part of the Broncos Central community. And saying that, let's get straight into it. Right, the first game is between the Manly Sea Eagles and South Sydney Rabbitohs. The game is to be played at 4 Pines Park on Thursday night and the game will kick off at 7:50 p.m. Let's take a look at the team list. All right, let's go through some of the stats courtesy of NRL.com.au. So head-to-head since 1998, they've played 46 times, and both Manly and South Sydney have won 23 games apiece. The previous meetings, Manly won this corresponding game last year, whereas the Rabbitohs beat the Sea Eagles back in 2024. At this ground, Manly have a 62% winning average, whereas South Sydney only 37%. Let's have a quick look at the form guide. So Manly won 3 of their last 5 games, with the Rabbitohs winning only 2 of their last 5. So Sportsbet has Manly as favourites to beat the Rabbitohs in this one. So you're looking at the two teams, you think Manly are better informed than the Rabbitohs have been. You look at their last 5 results. For example, their 2 losses, one came in the hands of Penrith, and that game could have gone either way. The game last week, I was expecting a bit more from them down at Cronulla, but I believe that's probably the loss that they probably needed. Just to steer the ship, and we'll just see whether they get back on track this week. South Sydney have been up and down. Yes, they've had a couple of players missing, some changes around, especially with the fullback side of things. Every now and again, Latrell Mitchell's been out, but the nucleus of the side is there. I think they got some big ends this week as well. So this will be a much closer game than what I think most people realise. Manly just resigned their new coach, Kieran Foran. I think they're on a 3-year deal, so congratulations to Kieran. I think he's done a great job since coming in, considering he's had no real background in coaching side of things. He was a player last year, straight into the assistant coaching role, and he's doing such a great job coming into the fray in round 4. And as I mentioned, the Rabbitohs have a lot of players returning for this game. I think it's going to be a close one, but I think my tip for this game is Manly to win, 1-12. The next game is between Melbourne Storm and Newcastle Knights. The game is to be played at Amy Park on Friday night. Kickoff is at 6 p.m. So let's take a look at the team list. Let's have a look at some stats courtesy of NRL.com.au. So since 1998, they've played 47 times. Melbourne have won 32 of those games, with Newcastle only winning 17. Melbourne have won the last 2 meetings between these two sides. Melbourne have a 76% winning rate at their home ground, which is incredible. Newcastle, unfortunately, only have a 15% winning ratio at this ground. Melbourne have won 3 of their last 5, whereas the Knights have actually won 4 of their last 5. So Sportsbet has Melbourne as favourites to beat the Knights. I think that's mainly because of the home ground advantage. If you look at the two teams on paper, I think that Newcastle Knights are very unlucky to be favourites. I think the only reason Melbourne are favourites is because they're playing at home and because of that win percentage they've got, and Newcastle's poor record at this ground. But you look at Newcastle, they've won their last 4 games on the trot. They've got their players back, they're in form. I know last week, yes, they won, but it wasn't really convincingly. But prior to that, they had some really good victories. Melbourne are starting to find their form. They had that loss against the Dogs 2 weeks ago, but they were missing their origin players. Put that to rest last week with a win against the Roosters. That was an incredible game to watch, and just to see them starting to get their mojo back. And as I said, Melbourne have a 76 winning rate at this ground, with Newcastle only 15. And Newcastle haven't won this ground since 2015. I actually think this will be a fast attacking game of football. I think both teams are going to throw a lot at each other. But I think Melbourne will win this 1-12. Next game is Canberra Raiders versus the Sydney Roosters. Game is to be played at GI Stadium. Kickoff will be at 8 p.m. on Friday night. Let's take a look at the team list. Let's go through some stats courtesy of NRL.com.au. So since 1998, both these teams have played 47 games. The Roosters have won 29 of those, with the Raiders only winning 18. Canberra have actually won the last 2 meetings between these two clubs. You would say on form, you would think, especially last year, that the Raiders were incredible. Like I said, the Raiders have done a great job in winning those last 2 games. Canberra have a 59% winning ratio at their home ground. Roosters have a 40% winning ratio at GIS Stadium. Canberra, let's have a look at the form guide. Canberra have won 2 of their last 5 games, and the Roosters have won 3 of their last 5. So both teams have been inconsistent in the last couple of weeks, but the Roosters were going on such a good run of wins, and they've actually had 2 losses on the trot, where the Raiders, they're still trying to find their consistency. They won their last game pretty convincingly against the Cowboys, so we'll see if that is a flow-on effect. Sportsbet have the Roosters as favourites to win this game. Like I said, the Raiders have won their last 2 games against the Roosters. Whether it means they've got the wood over them, I don't know if that's the case. The Roosters have lost a lot of confidence in their, they were attacking so well in that lead up when they were winning so many games on the trot. But their last 2 games, they've only scored 3 tries. That's against the Cowboys. Oh, the Storm. Yeah, it's very interesting. They've gone from such a good attacking side. It's amazing how in rugby league you can go from 1 week scoring a lot of points to the following not knowing how to score a try. I remember a game back in 2007. The Broncos beat the Dragons 70 points. Broncos beat Newcastle Knights at home 70 points to 18. And they were down 18 points to 14 at half time. Then the following week, they went down to Sydney, which I was unlucky enough to be at that game. And we lost because we didn't know how to score a try. So it's just really weird how that happens. And just remembering playing at night in Canberra is tough for anybody. So especially this time of year. So for this game, I'm going to tip Canberra to win by 1-12. The next game is between the North Queensland Cowboys and Dolphins. So the game is to be played at Queensland Country Bank Stadium. Kickoff is at 5:30 p.m. Saturday evening. Let's take a look at the team list. So let's go through some stats courtesy of NRL.com.au. Since 1998, it's not really comes to effect here because the Dolphins haven't been around that long. They played 6 times with the Dolphins winning 4 of those, the Cowboys just winning the 2. Dolphins have won the 2 previous meetings between these clubs and they've been emphatic in both victories. The Cowboys have a 54% record at home, where the Dolphins have won 100% of their games played here. I can't imagine them playing too many games here. I think they would have played 2 maybe at the most, maybe 3. They have no fear about coming to North Queensland. The Cowboys have won 3 of their last 5 games, where the Dolphins have won 4 of their last 5. Sportsbet has the Dolphins as favourites to beat the Cowboys in this one. Like I said, Dolphins one of the hot teams in the competition behind the Panthers and the Warriors. When their attack is on, they're a very hard team to... Dolphins never lost at this ground. The Cowboys did well their last home game. They beat the Rabbitohs pretty convincingly. The Cowboys have been really inconsistent. They went through a good patch there, then they had a loss against the Eels, and they came back and losing Dearden. Now they lost to, like I said, the Eels, and then they beat the Roosters away from home. Like I said, they had a good win against the Rabbitohs, and then they went down to Canberra and again did not look like they knew how to score a try. So I think the Dolphins will win this game. They'll win pretty convincingly, 13+. I just think the Dolphins are good form. They got Farnworth coming back. They've got Nicarima coming back. I think they're going to put on a good show up in far North Queensland and they're going to enjoy the warmer climate, I guarantee. All right, the next game is between the Brisbane Broncos and Gold Coast Titans at Suncorp Stadium. Kickoff is at 7:35 p.m. Saturday night. So let's have a look at the team list. All right, some stats courtesy of NRL.com.au. Since 1998, they've played 40 times. Broncos winning 27, where the Titans have won 13. I would have thought they would have played more games than that, to be honest. The Broncos have won their last 2 previous meetings against the Titans. One of those games was played this year, and the other game was played at Seabus Stadium on the Gold Coast late last year. Broncos have a 58% winning ratio at Suncorp, where the Titans have a 33% winning ratio. The Broncos have only won 1 of their last 5, and the Titans haven't done much better. They've lost every single game, as in they've lost all 5 games leading up to this one. Sportsbet have the Broncos as favourites. After last week's performance, I'm shocked. Both teams are desperate for a win. If anyone's listened or watched my last review of the Broncos game between the Dragons, they would have seen how disappointed I was in that effort. A lot's come out in the media this week. A lot's been said by some senior players. So let's see if that goes on show. And like I said, the Broncos have a lot to prove this week after their loss to the Dragons. I think everyone thinks because they were coming last, we deserve to win. But the Dragons just played better. And they can see them improving each week. Whereas we've gone the opposite. We've actually gone downhill. And I think even Madge gave the team time off in that bye period. And I think that's proved that's the worst thing he could have done. Or the best thing, we could move forward after this and just go on a winning spree because of that break that the team had. So watch this space. This previous game last year, Broncos come out on top pretty convincingly, especially wearing that beautiful black jersey. So we'll just see what happens. The Titans every week there seems to be improvement. So I think there'll still be more, but they're coming off a bye as well. So we'll see how their will they get in their off time and see if it did any good. My tip for this game is Broncos to win and win pretty convincingly by 13 plus. The next game is between the West Tigers and Penrith Panthers. Game is to be played at CommBank Stadium. It's a Sunday afternoon kickoff at 2 p.m. Let's take a look at the team list. So some stats courtesy of NRL.com.au. Going back to 1998, they have played 43 games. The Panthers have won 28. The Tigers winning 15. The Panthers have won their last two meetings between these two sides. The Tigers have a 39% winning ratio at this ground, where the Panthers have a 58% winning ratio. Tigers won 2 of their last 5, whereas the Panthers have won 5 of their last 5. And had a tough match last week against the Warriors. That they were missing some stars. They're all back this week, so it'll be interesting to see how this game portrays. Tigers had a good moral victory last week, but this is their biggest test of the season, and we'll see how they go. In summary, Penrith are the team to beat this season. I know they lost against the Dogs. Other than the game last week against the Warriors, no other team has actually come close. I do like them. The Seagulls actually, that's probably the toughest game they've had. So those three teams, the Dogs, the Seagulls, and the Warriors. So the Tigers need to step up. They need to do it pretty early on in this game. And as I said, this is a big test for the Tigers this week. Coming off a win last week, the confidence will be high, but you got to go against the best, and the Penrith team is the best. Now, there's this home ground advantage. There is none. You know, the Tigers play, I think, 4 games here every year, plus 4 games at Campbelltown and 4 games at Leichhardt. Penrith play here is the home ground until the new stadium is being built. So this is a neutral venue for both clubs. So there's no advantage, I think, for either team. I think it'll be a decent crowd, which is fantastic. And that's probably the best thing about playing at this awesome stadium is the fact they'll have more people in this ground to watch these two amazing sides. My tip for this game, however, is the Panthers, and I believe they will win pretty convincingly, and they'll win 13 plus. The next game is the Cronulla Sharks versus George Illawarra Dragons. The game is to be played at Ocean Protect Stadium on Sunday afternoon at 4:05 p.m. Let's have a look at the team list. So some stats courtesy of NRL.com.au. Since 1998, they've played 56 times. Sharks winning 31, Dragons 24, and they've had 1 draw during that time period. Dragons won this corresponding game last year, and the Sharks beat the Dragons previous to that one. Sharks have a 59% winning ratio at their home ground. The Dragons only 33%. Some form going action. The Sharks have won 3 of their last 5. The Dragons winning their first game of the season last week, only winning 1 of their last 5. Sportsbet have the Sharks as favourites in this one, as you can imagine. So Dragons would have had a lot of confidence this week at training coming off their first win of the season. So all those things they've been working on as training has finally paid off, and they beat the Premiers from last year. So if they take that into this game, I think it'll be a tough one. We'll just see if it works against this Cronulla side. The Sharks coming off back-to-back wins. They've played well the last 2 weeks. I didn't expect them to beat Manly last week, but they did in front of the home crowd. The Sharkies are a different team at home, but they just haven't been consistent. Like, they've actually won their last 2 games. Before that, they're almost win-loss, win-loss. So if they want to continue on the up-and-up with it like they've been doing, they need to win this game and win this convincingly. These two teams don't like each other. They're pretty much neighbours in the sense of where they sit in the New South Wales scheme of things. So this is a clash, a big clash between these two clubs. So a lot to play for. But I think the Sharks will win and win pretty convincingly by 13 plus. Honestly, I think the Dragons had a good win last week. I reckon they'll keep improving. But I think the Sharks, once they get on a roll, they'll be hard to topple down. And I don't think they'll play as bad as what the Broncos did last week. Last game of the round is between the Canterbury Bulldogs and Parramatta Eels. The game is to be played on Monday afternoon at 4:05 p.m. and the game is being played at Accor Stadium. Let's take a look at the team list. So head-to-head since 1998, they've played 56 games. The Eels winning 29, the Dogs 26, and they've had a draw between them during that time period. The Eels won this corresponding game last year, where the Bulldogs beat the Eels previously to that. The Dogs have a 54% winning ratio at their home ground. The Eels with a 47% winning ratio. Now, both clubs in the last 5 games have only won 1 game. So this is a big game for both clubs. Sportsbet have the Dogs as favourites in this game against the Eels. As I just mentioned, like I said, both teams have only won once in their last 5 games. The Eels have a lot of injuries, especially they've lost both their halves pairing with Moses and Pezzett. but they still seem to find a way to win or to be competitive. A couple of weeks ago, they went to North Queensland and they beat the Eels. They were competitive against the Knights last week in Newcastle. I expect this to be a tight game. The Bulldogs, I thought, although their confidence was going to grow after the game against the Storm, they brought players back against their game last week against the Tigers, which they couldn't capitalise on. But I do expect the Bulldogs to win this game, and I think it'll be a close one. I think they'll win 1-12. So in summary, my tips for round 14 are: so Manly to win 1-12. Melbourne to win 1-12, Canberra to win 1-12, Dolphins to win 13+, Broncos to win 13+, Panthers to win 13+, Sharks to win 13+, and the Dogs to win 1-12. So there you have it. These are my tips for round 14. Please let me know who you tipped this week and who believes that mine are completely wrong. I've got no issues with people coming at me, just talking to me, asking me questions. Please feel free. I love to interact with anyone who would like to discuss football as a whole or the Broncos. So yeah, just leave a message, put a comment down below, and let me know who you tip. Like I said, please like and subscribe, be a part of the Broncos Central community. I love to see you, and I love to hear from you, and I love to, like I said, have some interaction and just chat. We can do it offline or whatever, but yeah, just love to have that feedback. Hope everyone has a good round of tipping. My tipping was pretty shocking last week, so I do apologise if anyone followed suit. But enjoy the weekend, enjoy the footy. Bye for now. I'll see you next week. See you later.